the trade war between the United States and China. And why is this the biggest challenge? It is because when we look at the situation in Afghanistan, when we look at the situation in Yemen, when you look at the situation in Syria, etc., these are dramatic events, because here civilians are killed, and we don't see what would be the outcome of that. So this is really dramatic. However, from the world perspective, it is still compartmentalized. It means there is no big spillover effect on the other countries, and especially on the world economy. However, if you disrupt, for instance, the supply chain of the Saudi oil, this can have a global effect. But until that time, it will not have a global effect. So unfortunately, it will be dramatic for the populations living there, but there won't be big effect on the world markets. But this thing will have a big effect on everyone. So in that case, we cannot avoid it. This is a big effect, and we have to see how the other countries and how the other companies will evolve. Why is this an effect for everyone? I will refer to one saying given by the late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, and he was quoting an African proverb about that. And this used to be this one: when elephants fight, the grass suffers, but when they make love, the grass suffers also. So it means that all the other countries, all the other companies are grass compared to China and the United States. And whatever these two countries do, it will have an effect on them. So we cannot avoid it. We cannot say, no, this is only between the US and China, and we are not involved in this. That's impossible. So what is the involvement? The involvement is the following one. I'm just skipping this. The Asian countries, and especially here in Southeast Asia, when they look at China and when they look at the United States, they would like to have the best of the both worlds. On one side, they have military agreements and security arrangements with the United States, especially Japan and South Korea. So it means that they are largely depending on the United States in order to have their own security. But even in Singapore, and it was the latest visit of President Trump here, was the occasion also to renew the military agreement that we have with the United States, especially concerning the Changi Naval Base. So many of the countries that we have in Southeast Asia depend on the United States for their security. And at the same time, all these countries, for all of them, their biggest trading partner is China. So this is where we have a problem. So, of course, no one is asking you right now to choose. But on one side, you have security, and on the other side, you have trade. This is why you would like to have the best of both worlds. But maybe you will not have this opportunity. Maybe the true protagonist will ask you to choose, and that would be a very painful thing. So when we look at them, especially concerning the security matters, things have changed in the United States. As you know, President Trump is putting America first, so he doesn't hesitate to ask his allies in Southeast Asia, for instance, to pay. So this is what he is asking from Japan. Trump asked Tokyo to quadruple payments for US troops in Japan, to multiply by 4. Okay, so we can say this is a negotiation tactic, and we'll see how much it will be at the end. But if you start by asking 4 times, well, the possibility of negotiation maybe will not be so big after all. So Japan will say, well, that's maybe too much. On the other side, we did not precisely invite you to stay in Japan. So there are reasons why they would say, maybe we don't want to pay for this. Another country, the Philippines, has decided to stop the cooperation with the United States. So it means that from the security point of view, of course, having the United States to back your security is like a safety net for many of these countries, but situations can change in the United States. Many of these countries are still wondering, is the American backing or the American support indefectible, or maybe we have to see other options and to imagine other options. The second thing is the trade. So concerning the trade, on this chart you can see how the trade has shifted from the United States to China. So when you look at the red arrow, it shows how it has shifted from America to China. And if you are looking at the blue arrow, it is shifting from China to the United States. And there is a red, the red color is dominating it. So it means that for many of these countries here, there was a significant shift from the United States to China. And when you embark on this shift, it is very hard to go back, except in unforeseen circumstances, such as the coronavirus, which is stopping everything. But if we don't have this kind of force majeure approach, in that case, they would probably not go back in order to shift on the opposite side. So this shift is very important, and I will invite you to look at this website, which is called How Much. And this website is very interesting because they are giving you plenty of interactive information about the economic situation worldwide, and they also have this time lapse. So the time lapse is showing how it has shifted from the United States to China for the last, let's say, 40 years. So it is starting in 1980 and it is stopping in 2018. So when you're looking at this year, 1984, you will have the blue color dominating. But if you look at the year 2018, the red color dominates worldwide. So these are tectonic changes. This is very important changes. When you have to fight against China, you will think twice because it is still your most important trading partner. So if you have to choose, this is what they have asked the Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. It was in October. The interviewer is Fareed Zakaria. He is very famous, an anchor appearing on TV. And he is asking, I would say, a direct question. So the direct question was, if you have to choose between China and the US, what will you do? What was the answer? It will be painful. So that was the answer which has been given by the Prime Minister. And if you ask any country in Southeast Asia, it will be the same, except some countries which are closely associated to China, such as Myanmar, for instance. For them, there is no discussion. But for all the others, there would be a discussion, and they practically don't know what will happen there. So this is for the why is this very important? Of course, why did they start a trade war? It was a deficit concerning the trade balance between the United States and China. And from the Trump's point of view, in fact, he doesn't blame China. This is not a problem for him. He always says that he respects the Chinese people, etc. Okay. So what he blames is the multilateral organizations, such as the WTO, which have permitted China to have this position today. So he doesn't blame China. He blames indirectly his predecessors who permitted in the WTO to give such a big presence for China. And the most important date for that is the year of accession of China to the WTO, which is in 2001. So this year is the most important one, which has given so much room for China to be present today. So, of course, today we have this big trade war between them, but what Trump is saying, that's not the fault of China. It is probably the fault of the United States to have permitted this. So the consequence of this trade war between these two giants is given here. 4 terms. The first one is deglobalization. The second one is reshoring. The third one is decoupling. And the last one is bifurcation. So these are the 4 words which practically did not exist 5 years ago. But today, because of the action and initiative coming from the United States, they have become very important terms. So we will look at the 4 of them, and after that we'll open the floor for questions and answers. The first one is deglobalization. Until 2016, there was a widespread feeling that the globalization movement is irreversible and irresistible. We cannot stop globalization. We will always have new countries entering globalization. We will have new ways how to integrate different economies. It will never stop. Second thing, we cannot come back. We cannot pull out. So this was the general feeling until 2016. This year is annus horribilis for globalization because of the election of Trump and Brexit. So it has shown that it is not irresistible, and it has shown that it is not irreversible. So this is why, for many states in the world, and even corporations, they're a little bit lost because they cannot predict what may happen. 5 years ago, it was predictable. Globalization will continue. So we have to prepare for that. But today, it is no more the case. So Trump is fighting against the WTO. How is he fighting against the WTO? On 2 grounds. The first one, within the WTO, you have 3 groups of countries. You have the developed countries, you have the developing countries, and you have the least developed countries. And if you're in the category of developing or in the category of least developed countries, you enjoy some facilities. For instance, you can protect some of your industries, you can give subsidies, and so on and so on. So from Trump's point of view, the problem is who is in the list of the developed, developing, and least developed. And when he is looking at the list, he is becoming mad. Well, he becomes mad very often, but when he is looking at this one, he's saying, that's not possible. Do you know who is in the list of developing countries? You will find China, but you will find also Singapore. Singapore is in the list of developing countries. So Trump is saying, how come? How come? But Hong Kong is in the list of the developing countries. So he's saying that's impossible. We have to change something. So he asked his advisors, who fixes the list? And they are saying, well, if you look at the website of the WTO, it is mentioned here. There are no WTO definitions of developed and developing countries. Members announce for themselves whether they are developed or developing. And Trump says, what is this mess? We cannot accept this. So he has drawn this list, for instance here, the countries which are all developing economies. So you will find South Korea, Hong Kong, Mexico, Singapore, United Arab Emirates. All this is developing, according to the list which is given by the WTO. So Trump is saying, no, we have to change. But if you want to change, you have to change the rules of the WTO. And here, America cannot do everything. So this is one thing that he doesn't like about the WTO. He believes that there is unfair retribution to some countries which should not be in this list. And he's also giving this list here OECD member, G20 member, high income country per World Bank definition. You have so many of them in the list of the developing countries. So this is one thing that he doesn't like about the WTO. The second thing is concerning the disputes. Well, America has many disputes. For instance, today we have 253 disputes before the WTO because the United States have announced unilaterally a certain number on tariffs in order to protect their industry, such as aluminum or whatever. So we have 253 disputes. China is concerned with 55 of these disputes. So if you are going to a dispute at the WTO, you first have a panel. So this panel is hearing the dispute. If they cannot resolve the dispute, they are going to the appellate body. And this appellate body is making a decision. So what is happening today is that in the appellate body, 4 posts are vacant, and these 2 have expired. So we have just 1 member of the appellate body that can work. But in order to make a decision, you need at least 3 of them. And the United States is blocking the election of new members in the appellate body. So they are blocking the work of the WTO because they believe that the appellate body will take the position of the developing countries against the United States. So it means that Donald Trump has initiated a war against WTO, again because he believes it is not the fault of China to have this kind of deficit. It is the fault of the global or globalized movements which have permitted China